Hello, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reading you a story called The Head in the Bucket from True Crime Case Histories Volumes 1-3 book. In April 2001, a young woman named Mihaly Illes walked into the Vancouver, Canada Police Department and told police she needed to talk to someone about a murder. She had a story that was a bit hard to believe, and police didn't know what to make of it. Mihaly was divorced and living with her mother at the time. Right away, she admitted to police that she had bipolar and had been hanging around local drug dealers. For police, that didn't add a lot to the credibility of the story. The detectives handling the case knew that people suffer from bipolar disorder can sometimes have lapses in perception, and what she explained to them might not be the actual truth. Despite their assumptions, Mihaly gave a very detailed and persuasive story. Mihaly explained that 3 weeks ago, her best friend Leanne Price had shown up at her door, crying hysterically. Leanne told her that she had been driving around Vancouver with her boyfriend, Mihaly Illes. While he was driving, Illes kept reaching for something in the rear of his van. He was reaching for a white Home Depot bucket that was just behind his seat. Out of curiosity, Leanne looked into the bucket to see what was in the bucket that he was so interested in. What she saw in the bucket shocked her. Inside the bucket was a human head. Mihaly explained that Leanne showed up to her house again the following day. This time she brought her boyfriend Mihaly Illes with her. She had previously met Illes and his associates Derek Madinski and Javan Dowling at a bar that they all frequented. Mihaly Illes was well known throughout Vancouver as a drug dealer. He was a Hungarian national that had been deported from Canada several times for drug and weapons charges, but kept managing to get back into the country illegally. He ran an elaborate operation that involved taking marijuana grown in British Columbia over to the border into the United States. 1 pound of highly potent BC bud that sells for $1,500 in Canada sold more than $6,000 in Los Angeles. The DEA estimated that at the time the trafficking of Canada marijuana into the United States was a $1 billion industry. But rather than selling the weed for cash, they were exchanging it for crack cocaine, which they would then smuggle back into Canada. This amplified their earnings even more. It was believed that Illes and his friends Derek Madinski, Gary Favel, and Javan Dowling were making more than $80,000 per deal. When Leanne showed up at her door with Illes in tow, Mihaly was terrified. She was even more terrified when Mihaly insisted that the three of them go for a drive. Mihaly was known as a violent man, and Mihaly was worried that he might hurt her if she didn't go with him. Mihaly rode with them to a garage. Once inside, she recognized another of Illes' associates, Derek Madinski. Madinski was cleaning the inside of the van. Illes suddenly became agitated and pulled Mihaly aside. In an attempt to intimidate her, he told her that he wanted to show her what happens to people that betray him. He then opened the Home Depot bucket and pulled out a human head. Mihaly immediately recognized the face. It was the head of 27-year-old Javan Dowling, another drug dealer in Illes' team. Illes told Mihaly that Dowling was addicted to crack and had been skimming from the product. Dowling had blown a deal with one of their most important clients, and he needed to prove to the client that he could take care of the situation. Illes also didn't approve of him being so homosexual and didn't like that he spent his money so extravagantly. Dowling had been living in an upscale high-rise suite in downtown Vancouver's Wall Center. Mihaly continued her story and told detectives that Illes wanted to store the head in her garage. She didn't want to, but she was scared of Illes and felt that she didn't have a choice. That night, Illes moved the bucket with the severed head into her garage. Mihaly wasn't sure why he wanted the head to be stored in her garage, but she assumed it was to make her believe she was an accessory to the crime. The next day, Illes and Leanne showed up again at Mihaly's house. Without a word, they removed the bucket with the head from her garage and left. Mihaly then spent the next 3 weeks contemplating if she should call the police. Police thought Mihaly's story was difficult to believe, but decided to do a little research to try and verify it. The first step was to search police databases for the names of Mihaly Illes, Derek Madinski, and Javan Dowling. A quick search through police computers confirmed that Mihaly Illes was a well-known criminal. They found his prior arrest, deportation, and known drug dealing associates, one of whom was Derek Madinski. Javan Dowling, the man that Mihaly claimed was the head in the bucket, had a police record as well, in addition to several drug-related arrests. Javan Dowling had been reported missing by family members right around the time Mihaly claimed to have seen his head in the bucket. Detectives were starting to realize that the story Melanie had told them could actually be true. Luckily for detectives, it wasn't hard to track down Mihaly Illes. He was already in police custody, waiting to be deported back to Hungary once again. Before speaking to Illes, they wanted to speak to Derek Madinski first. Madinski was also well known to police and had his fair share of drug-related arrests. When police approached him for questioning, he acknowledged he was friends with Mihaly Illes, but said nothing of a killing or a head in a bucket. Detectives then looked into Melanie's story of the van. She told the police that she had seen Madinski cleaning the inside of the van. Vehicle records showed that Madinski had recently sold a van, and police recovered it from a used car sales lot. A thorough forensic analysis was performed on the inside of the van. In addition to photographs and fingerprint analysis, police used a hema stick to search for the presence of blood. A hema stick is a small stick that is coated with blood-sensitive chemical. It will indicate the presence of blood when touched to a surface and then sprayed with distilled water. The analysis of the van came back positive for the presence of blood, but police now needed to find out if the blood was Javan Dowling. All three of the drug dealers were also avid bodybuilders. When searching Javan Dowling's home, they found a weightlifting glove. Inside the glove, police were able to analyze skin cells that matched the DNA from the blood found in the van. There was now no question in the detectives' mind that Melanie's story was credible. They had proof that Dowling had bled in the van, but they didn't have definite proof that he was dead. Detectives knew that Derek Madinski was involved in the crime, so they got a warrant to wiretap his cell phone. After listening to his phone calls, they realized that Madinski was still helping Illes run the drug operation from prison. In addition to the wiretap, undercover police tried to infiltrate the drug ring, but nobody was saying anything about Javan Dowling, a head in the bucket, or a murder of any kind. Unable to get the evidence they needed, police asked for the help of Melanie Oval. Police had also wiretapped the phones of Illes' girlfriend, Leanne Price. Melanie agreed to call Leanne and try and get her to talk about the murder. Melanie called Leanne's tapped phone and expressed her concern with seeing the head in the bucket. She told Leanne that she was riddled with guilt and was considering going to the police with the information. Without admitting anything over the phone, Leanne tried to settle her down and told her that she would call her back immediately. After hanging up with Melanie, Leanne called Mihaly Illes at the prison. When Leanne called the prison, police thought she would talk to Illes about the murder, but detectives were shocked to hear her say nothing about her conversation with Melanie or the murder. Instead, she told Illes that the two of them needed to get married. Illes was confused by her saying this, but she assured him that she would explain it to him later. Police realized that Leanne knew exactly what she was doing. She knew if they were married, she couldn't be compelled to testify against her husband. 2 days later, Leanne and Mihaly Illes was married in the prison chapel. Illes was soon due to be deported from Canada. Police needed to come up with some evidence that a murder had happened before he was deported, or they may lose their chance. Melanie was also worried about his release. She knew that Illes still ran his business from prison, and he could easily have her killed. She also knew that he had been deported in the past, but that hadn't stopped him from coming back into the country. With only 10 days left before Illes was due to be deported from Canada, police decided to charge him with first-degree murder, despite not having a body. The charge, however, gave them some leverage to put on Derek Madinski. They gave Madinski a choice. He needed to participate in the prosecution of his friend Illes, or he could be charged as an accomplice in the murder of Javan Dowling. Madinski was a criminal and was surprisingly unfazed after more than 10 hours of questioning. Detectives then offered him complete immunity if he testified against Illes. He accepted the offer and agreed to tell the whole story of what happened to Javan Dowling. Madinski told police that he, Illes, and Dowling were planning on going to a movie together. Illes was in the back seat of the van while Madinski drove, and Dowling was in the passenger seat. As they were driving through West Vancouver, Illes asked Dowling to reach over on the dashboard and turn off the interior light of the van. As Dowling leaned over the middle of the van, Illes pulled out his revolver and shot Dowling 4 times in the back of the head. After the shots, Illes mumbled, quote, "There's not enough room for fags in this world," unquote. Illes then lowered the passenger seat all the way back so the body couldn't be seen from the street, and they drove back to the garage and parked the van inside. Once inside the garage, they removed the body, and Illes instructed Madinski to get to work cleaning the inside of the van. Madinski claimed that Illes then took Dowling's body into another room and severed his head. Illes told Madinski that because of Dowling's drug addiction, he shorted a particularly important client. That client then threatened Illes, telling him that they would seek retribution if he didn't take care of the guy that shorted them. Illes took that to mean that they would kill him. He told Madinski that he severed the head so that he could show the client he had taken care of the problem employee. Madinski told police that he didn't see the body or head of Dowling until a week later, when Illes asked for his help in disposing of the body. Illes had a plan to bury the body in the woods and cover it with lime. Illes was under the assumption that lime helps a body decompose more rapidly. Madinski and Illes then drove 40 miles north to a remote wooded area near Squamish, BC, to bury the body. The judge of Vancouver had told detectives that they had one day to present evidence that Illes murdered Dowling. If they couldn't come up with a body, they would have to deport him back to Hungary. Police then had Madinski take them to the place where they buried the body. In a shallow grave, they found the head of Javan Dowling. The head was well preserved. Illes had been watching too many mobster movies and had mistakenly covered the head with lime rather than lye. Lye would have sped up the decomposition, but lime actually acts as a preservative. Just as Madinski had told them, Javan Dowling had 4 bullet wounds in the back of the head. During the trial, Madinski testified against Illes, and Illes claimed that Madinski was the one that killed Dowling. In March 2003, a British Columbia Supreme Court jury found Mihaly Illes guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole for 25 years. 7 years later, the defense claimed that the judge had made a mistake when instructing the jury and that Illes' rights had been violated. The defense also argues that certain evidence had not been disclosed by the prosecution. As a result, Illes had his verdict overturned and was awarded a second trial. During the second trial, the defense argued that letters that were written to Leanne and other friends of Mihaly Illes were also presented as evidence. They claimed that the letters were expression of his innocence. The letters were filled with elaborate conspiracy theories in which he blamed both Derek Madinski and Melanie Oval for the murders. He claimed Melanie's description of the events had motivated by jealousy because she felt that Leanne was spending all of her time with him. He also spoke of his suspicion that Javan Dowling was still alive and in hiding. Another letter claimed that he believed the blood found in the van was from when Javan and his boyfriend got into a fist fight and he got a bloody nose. Yet another letter claimed that there was no murder at all and the police were fabricating evidence and playing KGB mind tricks. Yet another letter, the prosecution was able to prove that the prior letters were all written as a ruse specifically for the intention of the police intercepting them. The letter that the prosecution presented read, quote, "There is our defense. The letter says it all. Who killed whom? Why? It will be like an ace in our pocket. This could decide the case, make it or break it," unquote. After the trial, Illes was again found guilty and sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 25 years. Coincidentally, just 3 months after Javan Dowling's death, Derek Madinski was involved in another drug-related murder in California. Madinski and his associate Gary Favel traveled to Los Angeles for another of their marijuana for crack cocaine deals. This time they brought a new guy, Joe Bralick, with them. Bralick was not a career criminal like Favel, and Madinski was headed in that direction. He heard he could make some quick cash by handling the transaction, and they arranged for him to meet with the Los Angeles buyers. The 3 men traveled to Los Angeles together, but Madinski and Favel were the only ones to return to Canada. On July 5th, 2002, Joe Bralick's body was discovered in the middle of the day behind a discount tire store in Fullerton, California. He had been shot and his body was wrapped in plastic, lying between 2 parked cars. Joe Bralick's killer was never found. Thank you for listening. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing and liking my channel, and I will see you on the next one.